I'm Amy with a Y.
And I'm Brent with a Lee.
And we're just two blueberries floating in a bowl of chaos and coronavirus.
There you go. Yes.
I mean, like, the world is ending. I'm recording from my basement bunker with my yearly supply of Peeps that I better not eat all of, so.
Your canned goods, your beans.
Yeah.
You gotta have beans.
Yep. You gotta have all the Peeps. Peeps are delicious. And if you try to tell me that they're not, I'll ignore you because, you know.
All right, I'm just not going to give my opinion on Peeps then.
Good,
Because,
thank you. I understand that there are Peep haters in the world. Like, I get it. But you don't need to tell me they're gross because I don't think they're gross. They're good. But you do have to open the package and leave them on the counter for like a week so they get chewy. Oh, that is the best way to eat them. Aged
my goodness.
Peeps.
Then it's almost like the marshmallow parts of like Lucky Charms and stuff. Is it sort of like similar to that?
No, because it's not crunchy, but yeah, it turns into like a taffy type texture, and it's so good. But yeah, not what we're here to talk about, but interesting anyway.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, so the reason we are recording this, we're doing kind of a crossover show of Unapologetix and Secular Soup, is that in case you didn't know, Brent and I were part of a debate on the Right to Reason podcast a couple episodes back about cancel culture. And after that debate happened and was aired, I got a couple questions from mainly dudes asking some, I think, well-meaning questions that, you know, I said maybe we could discuss. Because, you know, I think these probably aren't the only guys that have these kinds of questions. So I thought it would be good to kind of go back over that debate and maybe expand on our thoughts and what we didn't get to say there and all that stuff. So if you haven't listened to that yet, like if you're listening to this and you haven't heard that, you might want to go back and listen to that. I'll post it in the show notes, and I'll show Brent how to post it in his show notes. So
Thank you. Yeah, I don't know how to do that.
It's super easy. Don't worry. So yeah, you'll want to probably hear that first, and there's 2 parts to it. But yeah, it was an interesting debate. It was how did you feel about the debate overall?
I felt like I walked into it way unprepared. Like I had a concept, I feel like, that we never, I mean, I got to touch on it, but I figured it was all encompassing, sort of the concept, and I could just reach out from the concept, which was just, you know, when people do something, people respond because there are people that are in the public eye, you know, so if they do something crappy, you know, then we're going to respond, you know, and that's sort of the basis of it. Like you're telling us we can't respond, you know, and they're like, oh, so we can't even say anything. I'm like, you're telling us we can't say anything. So who's not allowed to say anything? Because if we're all allowed to talk, this is the way that this goes.
Yeah.
You're allowed to say what you say, and then we're allowed to respond. You know, I mean, so.
Well, I feel like free speech so often gets tied in with, like, you've got your legal definition of free speech, and then your common definition of free speech, peace freech. I don't know.
Peace freech.
Because I'm eating Peeps, and it's wrecking everything.
The Peeps will get you.
Peep speech, yeah. But like, yeah, free speech in America, sure, we have the right to free speech, which means that you cannot be arrested or punished by the government for the things that you say. But that doesn't mean that you have the right to be completely free of any societal consequence that comes from your speech. I mean, which is what the issue seems to be with a lot of free speech absolutists. Like, sure, nobody should arrest you for what you say, and you absolutely have the right to say whatever you want to say. But everybody else then has the right to react to that, however they're going to react to that.
Exactly. Like, I mean, because as long as you got your free speech, so the fuck does everybody else.
Exactly.
You know, and it's like, we're going to respond if you say something like crummy or do something crummy, or we find out that you did something crummy in the past. Like, I can't help that my opinion changes.
Yeah.
You know, that's sort of my position on it.
Well, and I think, you know, social pressure does work. Like,
that's
kind of how we've progressed a long way we have a lot more to do in our society, but it's now become societally frowned upon to use the N-word, for example.
Right, which is...
To just be openly racist. I mean, it's coming back into style, frankly, because of Trump, but for a while there, it was frowned upon to just say certain things, and that's because, not because any law was passed, but because society kind of started going, hey, that's a dick move, don't do that. And you started to feel ashamed of doing it, and then you kind of quit doing it. That's how society works. I mean,
and that's good. Like, that's a good kind of shaming. Like, I hate shaming in most ways, you know, but if you're being racist and shit, like, shame that person. Shame them. Make them feel like they need to understand that, hey, you know, you have a position that is untenable. Like, you are thinking that, you know, like, what your opinion is that these people need to either go or, you know, leave the country or be, you know, dead or whatever. You know, I mean, that's untenable. You can't have those opinions and expect to not get some kind of pushback from it. It's like, accept everybody. Accept those that don't accept everybody.
Yeah.
You know, that's always my motto, you know?
Well, and like, I don't think anybody should, you know, I get where people are coming from sometimes when they say, well, people shouldn't have to lose their jobs or their careers or their families or what. I mean, yeah, I get that. I mean,
that sucks,
it's circumstance by circumstance, and it totally sucks. But again, it's part of how we function as a society, and I mean, I'm not in charge of the HR department of every company in the world. And it seems like it might be a good thing that companies are finally worrying about having people who say racist things on their staff, you know?
Right.
That didn't used to be the case. Like, now...
You used to be able to say whatever you want, and they would just, you know, if anybody said anything about it, they'd try to find whatever was wrong with that person.
Well, yeah, the fact that it's become financially better for companies to not have open racists and sexists on their staff overall. I'm not saying it's all that way, but in general, that's, you know, companies responding to things like, oh, fuck, we let that person go, and here's our, like, that's a good thing.
Because usually when somebody says something racist or something like that, like on a platform, like, you'll get sponsors pulled, you'll lose a lot of you know, backing and stuff like that, which fair, like, that makes sense because they want, you know, all the, I mean, it's usually from a purely capitalistic point of view, which is like, we want to get money from as many people as we can, you know, and the fact that you said this thing is now cut out a big section of our, you know, revenue because you pissed off this group of people and now they're not buying our product, you know, or they're not listening to our show or whatever it is. You know,
well, and everybody absolutely has the right to vote with their own dollars in whatever way they feel like it. Like, we, you know, I think we talked about it on our last Secular Soup, maybe. I honestly don't remember because it could be the one that's not out yet. There was a situation in my town just recently where there was a guy who owns a local restaurant, and he was promoting this Second Amendment rally thing going on because they're trying to pass a Second Amendment sanctuary law in my county. Oh. And so basically it came out that this restaurant owner was super libertarian, gun owner. I also happen to know that he's just a raging asshole and narcissist.
They usually are.
Yeah, a lot of people on the page that it was being discussed on were like, yeah, I'm never going to eat there again. Like, fuck that. I'm not going to support that. But then you had somebody coming in, chiming in, saying, that's not fair. Go there for the food, not because of his politics. Well, no. Like, I can choose as a consumer to go, I don't want to give that dude my money. Fuck that. Right. I'm not going to support him.
I really like Chick-fil-A sauce. I really do. Like, I love Chick-fil-A
I've never
sauce.
had it, so.
I will. I would say you should try it, but don't.
Yeah. Okay.
But it is amazing. Like, it's really good. But I won't eat there, and I'm fine with that. You know, the fact that you know, even though it's like missing that. You know what? They have a chicken sauce, like a chicken flavor sauce at Walmart. That's literally the exact same thing. You know, so you don't even have to bother. Honestly, you can just get that. But you know, it's like But you make, like you said, you make those like sacrifices. It's not even really a sacrifice, but it's just like, yeah, I'm just not going to eat there because I'm
just
agree.
not okay with it. Yeah. And
yeah,
it's the same with like content producers. I don't like what shitty things you say, so I'm not going to listen to your show. Like
right.
No,
like,
you're not owed an audience. Nobody is owed an audience to put forth their ideas to at all. Like if you say things people like and they want to listen to you, great. But that doesn't mean people have to listen to your bullshit just because you're saying it. Like, sure, you have the right to say it, but you don't have the right to have people listen to it.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Like, we get a lot of exposure, and it's kind of funny because, we're so progressive on our show and stuff, and we'll go on other like atheist shows where it's like we went on Truth Wanted, and it was very clear that like when I went on that show, a lot of people listened to that episode that came out when that show, when I went on that other show.
Yeah.
But a lot of them just were like, "Oh no, fuck this shit, I'm out." Like, this is way too, progressive for me.
Yeah, I mean,
people have the right to do that.
Yeah, everybody has. Audiences aren't a huge monolith. Like we've gone on shows or been interviewed by people that other fans of ours are like, "Oh no, I can't deal with that show. I'm not listening," which is totally fine. Like it doesn't mean that we can't go on it, but it also means that if we, excuse me, coughing from these peeps. I know. If we go on a show that is, saying super terrible things and then we get called out on it by our fans, that's legitimate. Like, it's legitimate for our fans to say, we don't like that you did that. And then Amy and I can do with that what we will. We can listen to that and hopefully grow our audience and, care about the things our fans are telling us, or we can just say, fuck you, and probably lose a big block of them, and that's our choice.
Yeah. Right. And you would lose the block of them,
Oh, yeah,
and
absolutely.
That's just the way it goes. And when you dig your heels in and say, fuck you, we're not changing, that's what's going to happen.
Yeah. I mean, we've had fans touch, I feel weird using the word fans. They're not really fans. Listeners of our show.
Listeners, there you go, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not a celebrity. Listeners have reached out to us before and said, this thing you said is...
But
it's weird. It's very weird. We like to call them the Secular Soup community or the family.
There you go.
Pretty soon it's going to be a cult. That's what we're aiming for. Anyway. But yeah, we've had people say, I don't agree with your stance on this or that, and here's why I think you were wrong. And we've gone, oh shit, you have a point, and we're actually going to think about that. And the things people have told me through this show have made me think differently about things. And that's what you want to do as a person. Like, why do you want to just draw this hard line in the sand and go, nope, I'm me and I'm never changing a goddamn thing? Like, how is that a good thing to do?
I'm refusing to learn. I'm not going to listen,
Especially when it's coming from atheists and skeptics. Like, it's like they think they have the answer already, and therefore everybody should just listen to them because they have the right answer. It's so frustrating.
Yeah, it is. I mean, because they feel like the atheist kind of block that they're in sort of makes it so that, hey, of course I'm, a free thinker, and I learn, I can admit when I make a mistake and things like, but it doesn't, it doesn't cover everything, it's just, I mean, we got a lot of atheists that are conservative, and it's like, it literally means nothing, honestly. I mean, it's an answer to one question.
A lot of libertarian atheists.
Oh, that's so frustrating.
Sorry, libertarians, if I've just lost all of you. I don't know what to tell you. We're going to talk shit about libertarians. It's just going to happen.
Because y'all are frustrating if you're...
Yeah. I'm curious, now that we're going through this whole pandemic thing, I'm curious what the libertarians think about, like in Minnesota where I'm at, the government is very quickly reacting and doing, basically giving unemployment to almost everybody without a waiting period, and they're doing all these things to help people very quickly, which is awesome. But I kind of feel like if you're a libertarian, don't you have to think, but they should just say, fuck you, deal with it. It's a pandemic, martial law.
That's why I've got a bunker with 2 years worth of
toilet
Alex
paper
Jones
and peeps.
shit. Yeah.
Like, yeah, fuck you. My family's got all the shit. I don't, and you, like, you know, we're obviously seeing that people are hoarding supplies. Please stop it if you're doing that. Quit fucking hoarding
come
shit.
on.
We can all get through this together.
You don't have to buy out the whole store.
I'm sorry I bought all the Peeps at the grocery store, but no one loves them as much as I do.
That is very hypocritical.
I know, it really is. I'm a bad
need
skeptic.
Peeps.
They do, especially when you're in isolation and you're depressed and like, they just make people happy. So one of the main things I wanted to talk about, oh God, Peeps, they're so good. The trick is to only eat them once a year. You can't eat them at the other holidays because that ruins it.
Well, that changes everything. Okay, I got you then.
Yeah, it's only at Easter.
I feel you.
And you can only eat the original flavor. They keep making all these new fucking cotton candy and like caramel. Fuck that. No. Original Peeps.
God. Caramel? Did you just say caramel?
Gross.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
Caramel Peeps?
That's just wrong.
That's abusive to your...
They have like watermelon Peeps now. Who did that? Why? Don't do that.
Watermelon Peeps.
There is one flavor of Peeps, and that's all we need.
Which is just Peep.
Which is fine. It's just Peep. It's marshmallow.
Flavored Peeps.
I will say you can eat the bunnies, not just the chicks. In fact, I like the bunnies better just because of the overall consistency. But,
right.
And I think you should stick to the yellow ones. But if you can only find the green and purple and pink ones, that's okay too. So I have a whole theory about Peeps. We could do a whole episode on this, but that's not what we're here to talk about.
Jesus Christ.
Oh my God.
Okay.
So one of the main issues that we were talking about on this, that kind of the other debate veered off into, was specifically allegations of sexual assault and sexual misconduct, and specifically Louis C.K.
Yeah, which is so
situation.
Weird that they would be so apologetic for him.
Yeah, he's just like, not a cool guy.
And then they were so weird about it too. Like, wait, you can't. Wait, what if I ask somebody if I can whip my shit out and just start going to town? Like, no. Well, what? Really?
Yeah.
Like,
and I think that's where, like, I got some comments from guys wondering, you know, maybe I'm not thinking about this correctly. Like, truly not understanding why that was such a bad thing that Louis C.K. did what he did. And so I got kind of a long series of messages from one of the listeners who I'm not going to name because I'm just not, but I think this person was asking me questions in good faith. We've had other conversations. So I wanted to kind of read some of his questions and answer them on the show because I told him we would discuss it on the show. And
yeah, that sounds good.
When we talked about Louis C.K. on the other show, if you're not familiar and if you haven't listened to the debate, basically what Louis C.K. did was a couple of, and this is just the first thing he was alleged to do. He's done other things, but mainly it was these two women comedians who came up to his hotel room supposedly to talk with him. They were very excited because he's got a lot of power in the industry. It was at a comedy festival. And when they got into the room and shut the door, he asked them if he could masturbate in front of them. And as you do when that happens, they just kind of froze. Like, yeah, is this really so he did it. He just whipped his dick out, started masturbating right in front of them. And they didn't, like, they ended up leaving. Like, they were laughing at first because it was so crazy what was happening.
It is pretty wild. I mean,
like, I can't even imagine finding myself in that position.
What a weird position to be in.
It really is.
Oh my God.
But then, so the question I got was, okay, so he says, you totally should be able to ask someone if you can jack off in front of them, depending on the context, power structure, etc. He said that was pretty much the only thing he disagreed with on our, on the debate that he was listening to. So I said, you know, I told him that depending on the context is kind of the key phrase. Like, if you're in a relationship with somebody, an intimate relationship, sure, ask them whatever you want. Like, that's your own business. Course. Your sexual life is your sexual life, and you are free and should ask their consent for absolutely everything. That's totally cool. Yeah. But when you are not in a prior relationship with somebody, no. Like, you should never, ever do that.
Right? And It makes me so freaked out that maybe he was doing that to like other people, because these were people that were comedians, right? And other girls that were just like, okay, I guess, because it's a different dynamic.
Yeah. I think where people get hung up is that we talk so much about consent now, which is awesome. Like, it's something that never got talked about before. So in this situation, it's kind of like, well, he asked them, like he tried to get consent. Why is that not okay? He's asking them to do something. He didn't touch them.
Yeah.
So we kind of, this person I was talking to and I went back and forth on different situations, and he wanted to know, like, he says he didn't see it much differently than someone saying, like, hey, want to go up to my room? Like, you're initiating some sort of asking somebody for sexual context, I guess.
Right, but that would be the extent of it, though. It's like, right. I agree to go to your room, and that's it. Then we'd need to get consent further. You know what I mean?
Right. Even if you're on Tinder or something and you know ahead of time you've both consented to going in for a hookup or something, then
right.
Okay, fine. Go ahead and ask that. I wouldn't recommend it because she's probably just going to leave because, frankly, it's kind of gross. Don't do it.
Don't do that.
You're not abusing her if you do that. If you've gone into this situation consensually knowing that there's going to be sexual contact of some kind, like, okay.
Right.
But no, if you have just met somebody and I should specify, I'm generalizing, as I always do, about men and women here. I know this is excluding a lot of people, but I'm generalizing because this is the main issue that gets talked about, is the dynamic between men and women when it comes to sexual allegations. We kind of went back and forth on that, and I just was like, here's the thing. So if you're asking a woman to do that, women have always been in a position where we've really been raised to, what's the word I'm looking for? We've been raised to really defer to men on everything, on whatever they want to do. And so when somebody asks you that, even if your brain is saying, fuck no, a lot of times that does not come out of your mouth because you're in shock like they were. Or you're thinking, if this person has power over me, what will they do if I say no? And a lot of times you're thinking, this person is bigger than me and can physically hurt me or kill me. So then if I say no, what happens? It's not just that women don't like things like that because it's icky. You're always, always, always putting a woman in an impossible position when you do that. If you ask a woman, again, that you've had no prior relationship with, especially no prior intimate relationship with, if you just are like, hey, can I do this sexual thing right now? You're just always putting her in an impossible position, and it's not okay.
No, because to her, it almost sounds like, I can do this sexual thing to you, right?
Yeah, right? That's exactly what it sounds like. This is okay, right? And I'm asking, so now later you can't say that I didn't ask because I asked. It's very manipulative.
It is. It's very manipulative.
And in a it's never okay, but in a work setting, especially, which is what I would argue Louis C.K. was in. He was in a work setting. Yeah. No. Like, one of my favorite new podcasts called What a Creep, they always have this phrase where they say, we just want to go to work, meaning, dudes, when we're at work, we just want to work. Like, leave us alone. We're not there to date and meet guys and find people to fuck. We're there to work, just like you. Like, that's all. Just leave us alone. And I think if men kept in mind more often, whatever you're about to do or say to a female coworker, would you say or do that same thing to a male coworker? And if you would, okay, proceed with caution, but like, give it a sec. Are you asking this because she's a woman? And it's just, dudes, quit putting us in these positions at work.
Right, yeah. I always try to take it almost to, so just picture somebody, whatever it is, that you're not attracted to, right? This individual, whether it's guy, girl, it doesn't matter. And them doing that to you, you know, how would you feel? You know what I mean? And like, or even someone that you hadn't ever thought of in that way and wouldn't ever kind of thing. They don't need to be like unattractive, but just somebody you wouldn't ever think about doing anything with. You know, how would you feel if they came onto you that strong? You know, and in the workplace, you know, where you know you're going to have to be around them every day for 8 hours a day from here till indefinite. You know, we don't know, but that's what I always try to frame it. You know, just to get some people thinking. You know.
Well, and somebody else had asked, and of course, now I can't find the comment on Facebook when I need it, but somebody else had asked about like the David Silverman situation, and you know, we talked. I think we talked specifically about that one on the debate, although now I can't.
They were really trying. They were trying to ghost it big time because they knew they looked like idiots. I think about that.
The funny thing is, immediately after that debate, their next episode was with David Silverman, and that dude lost his shit. I highly recommend listening just for that. He's practically screaming by the end of it at how maligned he's been, and just all of these bitches that are just ruining his career for no reason.
Just multiple people just saying, quit putting your hands on me, and he's the victim. Jesus Christ.
So I'm not super versed in all of the David Silverman accusations because I fucking can't keep up with every sexual aggressor in the entire atheist world, because that would be impossible.
It'd be tough, yeah.
But I do know that one of the allegations is about him putting his hand on somebody's back, like as she was leaving, something about a hand on her back, and how that certainly doesn't seem like it rises to the level of assault. And I would agree with, you're not assaulting somebody just by touching them, especially if it's, you know, on their back or on their arm or something like that. You're not assaulting them, but you are still putting your hands on somebody without their consent. And you, like, again, men, you don't fully understand what that's like when a man thinks he has the right to put his hands on you. You don't know what that woman's background is. You don't know if she's been sexually assaulted, and you putting your hands on her is triggering her in some way. You just imagine people just walking up to you and just touching you. I don't think it happens to men as much as it happens to women.
Yeah, I mean, maybe if we're in like Italy or someplace where they like grab your face and kiss like twice or whatever, you know, we might be able to understand, you know, what it feels like. But yeah, no, and the real harm, I think, or the real the way that it came out and you really understood his position was afterwards, was when he was telling, hey, don't tell anybody that happened.
Yeah,
you know, that's really telling. In a lot of ways, you know.
Because you know you did something that wasn't right. Like, I honestly cannot imagine a situation. And maybe this is me, but for all the atheist conferences I've been to, which isn't a ton, but I've been to a few, going to conferences, having meetups with other atheists, just doing anything out in the community, I have never, ever once considered putting my hands on somebody else for any reason. Ever. Right. Like, I have some friends who are huggers, and they like to and most of them will get consent, and they will only hug you if they know you and they know that you're okay with it.
Right.
But even then, just no. There was no reason for him to put his hand on her back. None.
No.
I mean, were they already, like, if it's me with my partner, that's different. You know, if it's me out with that's a different level of intimacy. If it's a friend or a coworker, don't fucking do that.
Right. And it's so, honestly, it's so weird that we have to even discuss this at all.
Yeah.
Because these are just, I feel like these should be just natural cues, natural social cues for people to pick up on if they're empathetic human beings with mirror neurons. Like, you just don't do that. Like, it's simple as that. I don't know. It's like, have you ever been to a party? Have you ever hung out with people? Do you know humans? Like, you know?
Yeah.
Jesus.
And I think maybe it's that the lines get blurry for people when, like, I can remember being in my early 20s and going out to the bar and, you know, basically looking to hook up, because that's what you do in your early 20s when you're out drinking at the bar.
Sure.
And things can be a little different with the social cues, but still, like, just don't. Nobody wants you to have you put their hands on them unless you've given them some sort of. I don't even know what the correct cue would be to tell someone that, but
you just, I don't know. It's almost like you just know, like you just know, like this person, like they do social cues where they'll either like be rolling their eyes at you or whatever. It doesn't, like, there's so many social cues.
In that setting, you know that everybody's there for a particular reason.
That's true too.
Like depending on where you're going and why you're there, that's the reason people are there. And if that's not why people are there, they're pretty good at sticking to themselves and not engaging in conversations. And if somebody doesn't want to engage back with you in a conversation, that's a cue. They're not interested.
It's like I go to, there's this really cool gay bar up the street called Enigma. And I've gone there several times, and it's almost like that because it's almost, it is kind of a hookup spot, for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And, I'll go there just to hang out and just watch the drag show and just have a good time and stuff.
Yeah.
And they'll come up and they will sort of be, it seems like sometimes they're a bit more aggressive, but as soon as they, like, I do some of those social cues where I kind of, I'll cross my arms or lean back or, if they, whatever, and I tell them, hey, no, I'm actually not here for that. I'm just here to hang out. And they back off immediately. It's almost like they get social cues better than straight people do. It's amazing.
One of the questions that the guy who I was messaging had was about, coworkers hook up all the time and they'll get together for drinks after work and people screw around at conferences and why is that so terrible? And it's not that that's terrible, but I feel like a conference is slightly different than a work situation, for one thing, because in the work environment, you're around that person for God knows how many years to come.
Yeah, and you have to be around that person.
You have to be around them for a long time. A conference is usually a weekend thing, and you're socializing, and it's a little bit different than knowing that you're going to have to return to work day after day after day after day with this person. And yes, some people do go to conferences with the intention of doing that, and I don't think there's necessarily anything wrong with that, as long as you understand that that's not what most of the people are there to do. Like, I don't know.
They're there to get information and learn, and see the people that they really admire on stage. And that's what they're there to do.
They're there to meet up with their friends and meet up with these people they haven't been able to meet in real life. And again, like, as much fun as I had at Skepticon, I don't think I ever touched a single person once. Like, I managed to get through the whole weekend without ever walking up to somebody and touching their arm or hugging them for no reason or putting my hand on their thigh or like.
I mean, you were undressed.
I managed not to do it.
You were undressed by Mandisa, so I don't know.
That's true, very true. But that was entirely consensual. So
exactly, and very clear. And you
permission
were
was asked and answered. So exactly. There was consent ahead of time. There was enthusiastic consent. It was all consensual. And it was, at midnight when everybody else was asleep and we weren't all watching a seminar of some kind.
Right. So that's
Dee's
the only...
so fucking cool. Yeah.
She's cool.
Awesome.
I love it.
And yes, I guarantee there are people there to hook up. I get it. And sometimes I think maybe we should have like colored badges or something when you go to a conference. They're like,
it's like a sock on the door kind of thing.
Yeah, I'm into it. Or no, fucking leave me alone. Like, you can
like come
talk to me. It's okay.
Single and looking.
Single and here to mingle or not.
Singling and mingling.
I noticed, like, we did that at the Secular Women Work Conference. It wasn't that exactly, but they did have different colors that told people whether you wanted people to come up and initiate conversations with you.
Oh,
because
that's
some
clever.
people are very uncomfortable with that,
Yeah.
And then there was a different color for, come up and talk to me. It's totally cool. And there were like 3 different things. And I thought, that's such a great idea because so many people are introverts and anxious, and the idea of someone just walking up to them and starting to talk is terrifying. And then you have me who walks up to literally everybody and starts talking.
Me too.
And that can be a bit much for people. So I appreciated having the little cue on the badges there that like, nah, maybe not that person.
They're not all about that.
They'll come up and talk to me if they want to. I've got the color on that says, come talk to me. So, but I think,
cool.
What a great idea for the people that aren't comfortable telling someone, I don't want strangers to come talk to me. But yeah, maybe you could, if you're having a huge conference, maybe you have an extra little pin or something you put on the badge.
Right.
It's like, hey, hit on me. I'm into it.
Yeah.
Even then, though, do not start out with, can I jerk off in front of you? Ever.
Yeah, that's just a bad beat.
It's just not good. It's not good at all. I don't know. I don't know how else to describe it other than...
It's so funny.
No.
Because I mentioned that thing about Eli Bosnick, know, and I don't know, did you hear the latest Citation Needed episode?
No, I did not.
Oh my God. Yeah, that was the premise of the opening skit. Because it was about Pornhub, it's like, the latest or the past year's worth of Pornhub, and he's like, so I'm going to do some research, and he just like unzips, and Cecil's like, what the fuck, man? What are you doing? Just get that, no, stop. I was like, see, I wasn't that far off, okay? I picked the right person for that analogy.
Yes. Whatever you think Cecil is going to say, imagine the woman saying that, and that's what she's thinking. Even if she's not saying it, she is thinking it because, And that's such a big part of the culture. Like, I really, really think, and I don't know, because I'm not male and I didn't grow up as a man. I don't identify as a man. I live with 3 of them, and yet I know nothing about them. But like the strength with which we are raised to just kind of let men do what they want to do is, I think men in general don't understand that and how powerful that is and how much it seeps into the culture. And it's scary.
Because that's sort of one of the things, like, as time has progressed, has been something that has been sort of eliminated bit by bit.
Yeah.
Right? The aggressiveness. I mean, you go back to, like, the pirate days, if you watch Pirates of the Caribbean or something, like, you see how aggressive everybody is towards the women and stuff. And it's like we've managed, as a society, gained intelligence and stuff, how, we've eliminated that because we're actually listening to other humans, or we're having more empathy as a society, and I think that's awesome. But it's like, but we're still not done. We're not done. There's still a lot of work to do.
Do you think maybe that's part of it, that we've made progress, and so many people look around and go, "What? Like, we've made all this progress? Like, we don't walk around just grabbing." Well, some people still do, but because it looks like we've made a ton of progress, people think that we've done it now, we've made it, kind of like how people think racism is solved now because we had a black president.
Post-racism, exactly. A post-racial nation because Obama was president, so that means racism doesn't exist anymore. That's ridiculous. This is
and I think
silly.
People think that the only way you can be sexist or the only way you can be racist is if you are actively right now in your head thinking, I hate all women or I hate all black people. Like,
what you're doing. That's
not what racism is.
No, exactly. And it's because a lot of times, I used to do, before when I was a Republican and conservative and stuff, I used to do racist stuff all the time and had no idea that it was racist.
No. And you would have gotten angry if someone tried to call you racist because you would have known in your heart, no, I'm not. Like, I have done the same thing because that's how I grew up white.
Yeah, exactly.
You grow up thinking, I'm not racist, because all you ever learn is that being racist means you actively hate all people of a different race.
Right.
But that's not actually what the full definition is. Like,
it's believing your culture is better than other culture, and that can bleed in so many ways.
Realizing it. Yeah, sometimes not even realizing that you think that, even though you do. And once you start noticing the times when you do that, then it's like everything just kind of comes undone, and you start noticing, oh shit, I've thought this and I've thought that, and those actually are racist thoughts, even though I didn't think they were. And it's the same thing with sexism, you know?
But I think
it's more complicated almost with sexism just because we have these very specific defined roles for men and women that people are expected to stick to, and people get confused about what the role is. And
right. And that's sort of the problem with where we came from, where we had these, like, society basically, and honestly, through religion, it was basically because of religion that we deemed these roles this way. Women are like this, men are like that. Men get to do this because they're, closer to God or whatever, and God set them as the head of the household. So they get to do these things that women just can't do because they're really just there for babies,
Yeah.
And we've come so far, but we're still not done. Like, yeah, you can look back and be like, yeah, well, it's not like that anymore. And it's like, no, it's not. But there's still some of those remnants from that lifestyle here today.
I'm judgy as fuck. I just am about everybody and everything, and I try not to be, but I really am. But, like, I'll think some horrible thing about a woman for any reason, and I'll have to ask myself quietly in my head, like, is the reason I don't like her because of a sexist assumption? Like, do I not like her because because I think she's too aggressive and that's just a stereotype? And, like, you kind of need to do that all the time and keep questioning yourself and think, wait, is my opinion based on real information, or is it based on kind of how I was raised to see women and what our role is and what different women should and should not do? Yeah. And I wish men would do a little bit more of that too.
Right. I mean, I have to do that constantly.
Oh, yeah.
I feel like so often I'm, I'll a lot of times I'll make a mistake, and then I'll tell them, I'm so sorry, and I'll try to do better. And then I'll go from there, but I make sure that I do better. But it's like, I do make mistakes like that, often because, like you say, like it's almost automatic in a lot of ways. Like, we just respond the way we respond because of what we're used to or whatever.
Yeah, and you can't escape it. And I think just the willingness to say that, to say, oh shit, I'm sorry, and then genuinely try to do better. Yeah. Is all anybody's asking for. Like,
and that's growth. That's all anybody's looking for, right? I mean, it's just growth. Like, hey, realize when you do something that's messed up. And it's, coming from, being a conservative and everything, man, it's been a walk. It's like mistake after mistake, and be like realizing what the mistakes were and then having to readjust. But it's none of it, I feel like, has ever been me paying anything. Like, nothing has ever been taken from me doing that. Like, oh, I got to give up my manhood. No, that's not true at all. It's just me learning, I never gave anything up living this way.
You've just become a fuller person.
Exactly.
Really. I mean, yeah, you've gotten more out of life because you've come to more realizations about things, and I would guess that's probably strengthened friendships and relationships.
Oh, and like crazy.
Made you someone people want to talk to. Nobody gets upset because, well, okay, I'm not going to say nobody, because never say never. Most people aren't going to get upset because you did something and then that you genuinely did not understand was bad, and then you apologized and you tried to do better. It's, like with Louis C.K., my argument with him was, what the fuck has he done to make anything better?
He hasn't.
Like,
and
do I necessarily
recognize that he was just saying he was sorry so that he could get all his sponsors and shit back? Like, it was a business transaction.
Well, and the whole thing with, like, I know they were frustrated with people who say, well, they're rich, they'll be fine. But in this circumstance, it wasn't, I made some comment about how much money he has. And my reasoning for that wasn't, well, rich people are all fine. It was, there is a really tangible way that Louis C.K. could do some good and could make some amends, and that is through his fortune. He could be giving money to organizations that help sexual assault victims, that, people with that kind of money can do a lot of good. And that's honestly an easy way to try to make some amends for what you did. It's not going to fix everything you did, but it's something, and he doesn't even do that as far as I know.
No,
and then he just gets right back up on stage 9 months later and starts joking about it.
And did he even address it really, or was he just like, these? I
don't think so.
He didn't even address it. Like he acted as if nothing had happened because you can do like the one. What was that comedian that did the where he was depressed? And he did the whole like thing about jokes about him being depressed.
Oh, I don't know.
Shoot, I can't think of his name.
I don't know.
But it's on. I think it's on like Amazon or something.
Okay.
But anyway, that was like the whole thing was like he was a comic for a long time. Mm-hmm. He realized he had a problem, and he like left. And stopped doing comedy for a bit. And he came back and did this special about how much depression is a hard thing to do comedy about. And
it's not something that you've even done to yourself. It's just a thing you experience. It's not something bad that you did,
Right. His name's Gary Goldman. That's his name.
Oh, okay.
And it's on, I want to say it's on Netflix.
No.
It's on HBO. I'm sorry. It's on HBO. I'd say it's a bit high,
for
more
the rich people.
Highfalutin. Yeah. Exactly. No, but it was so good. And it was like, these are jokes that were like genuine to this guy. Like and they were really funny. Like it was, he did a great job of like taking something real and kind of finding the humor in it. And I feel like Louis C.K. could have done something like that, something similar with his special, and been like, look, I had these problems, and I kind of realized, and it could have been hilarious. Yeah, it's not the coolest thing in the world to, jack off in front of a, whatever, it could have been funny in however way he would have done it, but he didn't even address. He acted like he hadn't done anything at all.
Yeah,
there was no growth at all. I don't know.
Aziz Ansari, who stepped into some hot water with Me Too, and his situation was a highly debated one because it was more about, some people felt that with him it was just they were kink shaming him, and that it was people thought he did something wrong because of what he was trying to do sexually, even though he wasn't necessarily doing things without consent. It was a huge thorny story.
Yeah.
But when he came back, so he came back and made a special on Netflix, I don't know, 2 years later, something like that.
Yeah.
And I was interested to watch it because I'm like, I wonder what he's going to say about it. And I've heard people, tell me, that one I honestly was a little torn on, because I have heard the argument that, look, you're just shaming this guy for what it is he likes to do sexually. He admitted, or even she admitted, that he asked for consent the whole way. He'd stopped doing things that made her uncomfortable. Like it was, it seemed like he was trying to do things the right way. But when he came back, he did address it, and he did it right away at the beginning of the show, and he did it seriously, and he was genuine, and he was like, look, I did something that made somebody feel incredibly unsafe and uncomfortable. And like he kind of admitted that, like, even if he didn't go on a big thing and say, I didn't do anything wrong, fuck her, she just does these two liberal snowflake.
Yeah.
No, he was like, I did this thing and it's kind of fucked up, and I don't, I thought it was an interesting special, and he didn't spend the whole time talking about it, but he at least acknowledged it in what seemed like a genuine way.
Yeah. No, he did. And yeah, I felt like the way that, because it was about him, he wanted to gag her, right?
I don't even think that was it. No.
Something with gagging. I can't remember exactly, but yeah, it was like insane, but it was almost like, again, like the power dynamic where,
sure,
it's this, and she wasn't a comedian or any, like, she wasn't,
she was on a date with him.
She was just a regular, girl that was like really liked Aziz Ansari, and he took her out on a date, and it just felt like it's almost just like where somebody's trying to persuade you to do something that you really admire.
Sure. Felt manipulative.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, which is totally fair. And
right.
I think that's, I don't know, I can't read people's minds, but I guess in that situation, I feel like he was probably the type of person who didn't think he was being manipulative because he did think he was asking for consent. And I don't know.
Right.
I wasn't there in that room and I'm not him. But he at least didn't run around going, that crazy bitch. I never did any. Like it seemed to me like he genuinely tried to be respectful of what her feelings were and acknowledge it. And whereas Louis C.K. right in his quote unquote apology uses I think he actually said in it, I shouldn't have taken my dick out or something. He uses just the most flippant wording possible.
Right.
Like, really, dude? It's not a joke. Like, you really did some awful shit.
Don't do comedy in your apology, man. That's just not a good idea.
No, it's
especially
it's not a bit.
No.
Especially when it's clear you're only doing it to get more, to not have to stop working or...
Right.
Well, I was just going to say, I think there can be complexity to this stuff, and I get that it can be maybe hard, especially for guys who, like I said, have grown up with different ideas about what's okay and what's not okay. But my advice right now to all men and all people out there really is just don't fucking touch people ever.
No,
unless they want you to. And you'll know they want you to because you'll either be in a relationship with them or you'll have some sort of social cue or you'll be on a date together because one of you will have asked the other on a date. But seriously, if you're at work, just stop it.
Seriously,
don't put your fucking hands on people.
Don't try to dip your
anywhere.
pen in the company ink. That's just don't even try to dip just throw the pen away. Get rid of the pen.
Away. People are gonna find romantic partners at work. It happens. I get it, but I don't know. The way you go about that doesn't need to be, I'm going to go put my hand on her back every day until she realizes what a swell guy I am. No.
Because they have to learn.
Yeah. They won't know what a great guy I am and how much better I am for her than everybody else if I don't do that. Oh my God. That's one of my biggest pet peeves with tropes in movies is the guy who just needs her to know that he's the good guy, and as soon as she figures out that he's the good guy, everything will be okay, and she'll dump that bastard she's going out with and go out with
exactly. It's
fucking gross. I don't know.
It's so annoying. But,
anyway, the whole theme of this episode is just don't fucking touch anybody ever, especially with coronavirus. This is a great time for us to all learn about not touching people.
Right? Yeah.
So there you go. Just don't do it. Just because you have an opinion doesn't mean people have to like your opinion.
Right.
Just like people are going to hate what we're saying right now, and that's fine.
Yeah, exactly. And honestly, that should have been the basis of the conversation, I felt. But somehow we sidetracked onto whether or not you're allowed to say the N-word.
Yeah.
And we even got some shit. It was interesting, and I felt kind of badly about it because, and I did respond, but somebody was like, "How are they doing it?" Because he put that on the front of the cover, but on Cancel Culture Part 1, the N-word. Right. And there's no black people involved at all. And people are like, "What the heck? How can you have conversations about the N-word if there's no black people involved?"
Which is a completely fair argument.
It is. It was.
It's something we should have considered.
Yeah, well, I told him, I was like, I totally agree with you. You're absolutely right. But we didn't, we didn't know that was going to be one of the arrows in their quiver far as what I thought we were more going. Is.
Yeah, I thought it was more. We were going to be more going into it, discussing kind of specific examples of people that they felt had been canceled and why. But, when you're doing something like that, the conversation just kind of takes you where you're going to go. And that
was wild.
I don't know.
I was like,
it really was.
He pulled out the whole argument of, well, what if your great-great-grandparent was, one of your grandparents was black, then are you allowed to say the N-word? And we basically were just as honest as we possibly could be and said, I don't know, because we don't know. Either one of us have a great-great-grandparent who are black and are trying to say the N-word. We're not, you know what I mean?
But I think, I think the basis for it isn't, they're thinking that I don't know, I feel like they're thinking about it the wrong way. Like, your ancestry is the judge of what you're allowed to say. It has nothing really to do with your genetics or your ancestry. It's how people perceive you when you're going through the world. You know, people perceive me as a woman, and I get treated accordingly because that's what they see me as. That's how I look. That's the culture. And like you said, you can't wash off your skin color. You know, sure, if your, you know, great grandpa was an African American, okay, but do people see that about you? Do they treat you differently because of that? Odds are no. Odds are they don't see it, and so they don't treat you differently because of it. And I think that's kind of the missing element.
Yeah, and I was listening to it, and I was thinking, you know, about my answer, you know, and I was like, I don't know, it's good. But from what I would say is, if you aren't visibly black, you know, if you can't, if you can't see that you're black at all, like it's just somewhere in your genetics, somewhere way back along the line. If you choose to use the N-word, okay, but you're going to have to do a lot of explaining every single time you use the N-word, because that you're not part of that culture. The culture is what's important, because the culture recognizes what that word was, the history of it, how that was taken back. And it's very similar, and I wish I would have said that. I thought I did, but I guess I didn't. It's very similar as if, like, well, for instance, like usually if you're a guy, I would say it's like your wife, me calling her honey, sweetie, and baby. Yeah. You know, those words just aren't for me, because that's not the relationship that we have. Right. You know what I mean?
And that's a good analogy, too. It's
right. That would upset you. There's a person that would be, you know, you would be upset by that if I was calling your significant other by those pet names, you know? And it's because those names are for you and them. You know, and not for me. And it's the same way with the N-word when it comes to how they've taken that word back and used it sort of as a colloquial use of just, you know, dude or homie or whatever, you know. Yeah. They get to do that because they're in that culture, they're in that relationship with that word and stuff, you know.
Well, and I think I had asked, you know, my son, my teenager, comes in. I guess it's a good sign, but he asked me a lot of questions about stuff like this, social issues, and he seems to genuinely want my opinion, which is shocking to me.
Oh, that's
but sweet. He's asked me before, like he's a very good kid, and he's very social justice minded, and he's a good atheist, like he should be. But he's asked me before, like, why is it that if you're white you can't use that word? He's like, I know you can't, and I know it's bad to use it, but he's like, but can you explain to me, like, why? I want to understand why it is. Because to him, you know, he's a kid. He's a kid growing up in a practically all-white town where he's got no exposure to people of different cultures and views. And
he's probably got, like, guy friends going, you know what? If they can say it, then we could say it. Or if we can't say it, then nobody should say it. You know, that's the two options.
That's exactly what it was. He was saying, well, if it's such a bad word, why doesn't just everybody stop saying it if it's a bad word? He's like, I don't get it. And I had asked some friends on Facebook, just like, you know, what do you think I should tell? Like, are there any resources for how I can explain it? Because it is it's hard to explain to a kid if they don't. And someone pointed me to a video by Ta-Nehisi Coates where he's doing an interview and he talks about why you can't use the word. And he says he thinks that part of the reason people get so upset about this in particular is that white people have never had to not say something. Like we're allowed to say whatever we want to. Just like we're, you know, with the whole cancel culture thing, we've always been able to say what we want with minimal consequences. And so we think that everything should be available to us and we shouldn't ever have to give anything up. And that's why it seems to bother white people so much that there's this thing that we're not supposed to say, but other people can. I did, however, while I had time to think, remember what one of the main questions was that somebody else asked that was totally different than all of this stuff. So, and again, I couldn't find it on Facebook, but it just clicked. So when we're talking about issues of sexual assault, why is it that this person wanted to know, why is it that the burden of proof is switched. So like, if you're in court, it's always innocent until proven guilty. So why do we switch that around then if it's a sexual assault case and we give the benefit of the doubt to the person making the claim and not the person having the claim made against them? Because it's not the first time I've had someone ask that. You're supposed to treat people as if they're innocent.
And that's, honestly, I feel like that's that's got to be a very atheist.
Oh, yeah.
Because that is that is technically the correct position is, if you're making the claim, then you're the one with the burden of proof. That's atheism.
Which is why I think a lot of atheists are the ones asking the questions, and atheist men especially. But wait, I've learned this one. It's that the burden of proof is on the person making the claim.
Right. So I could see why we get that.
Oh, sure. And I get, for starters, we're not always, when we talk about believing women or giving women the benefit of the doubt, we're not talking about a court of law at this moment. Sure, I think people should be prosecuted, but initially, when you say something like believe women when they make these claims, it's because we haven't as a society for so fucking long, and we've learned through statistics and through progression of time that women generally aren't lying about this shit. And so instead of defaulting to their lying, there's so much of it. No, go ahead. I would say
there's so many times that women have been mistreated and stuff and nobody believes them. And that's been a trope throughout America for so long. I mean, it's almost like a black guy saying, I didn't do it, is, and say, and not us being like, what I mean? It's almost the same thing, because we arrest black people, black men especially, so often for shit, for resisting arrest. Yeah. They get arrested for resisting arrest. Yeah. But, which doesn't make any sense. But, and it's if that was the trope for so long, then it's us switching the burden of proof like this is because it's, it's been the opposite for so long. You know what I mean? I don't know. But go on with what you were saying.
I don't even think it's necessarily that we're saying that you should believe women even though they don't have any proof of anything. I don't know. These kind of crimes are things you're just not going to have proof for starters. It's
right.
Almost impossible because, it's something that happens.
It's an unfalsifiable claim.
There you go.
It is. I mean,
it's something that happens usually alone with that person and without witnesses watching and without, what kind of evidence are you going to have unless you have a videotaped recording of it? Or, certainly there are times where you can have some sort of evidence, but generally not. It is going to be him against her, or it's her against her, or him against her. It's their word against
theirs. Yeah.
But I think we've learned over time that there's less of a reason for women to make this up than there is for men to commit these crimes.
Right, and that's what we're working off of is what's in, because motive is also a big part of court law and everything. What's the motive? If a woman just decided to make this up and in doing so makes their life much, much more difficult. Because let's face it, anytime you come out against a public figure like this, you're going to be attacked. Yeah. It's it's just gonna happen. The Joe Rogan folks are gonna be out there after you.
Oh yeah. Well, and even if people think, well, they're gonna write a book, they're gonna make money, and that's how they're gonna benefit off of doing something like that. You have no way of knowing that going into it.
That's an assumption.
Exactly. You don't just go, hey, I'm gonna make up this claim against this guy, and maybe if I get enough people to believe me, I could write a book and maybe that book could make some money. No.
I'll be bigger than Monica Lewinsky. It'll be awesome.
There are much bigger, there are much easier ways to make money, trust me. I don't know. But and the hard thing is you can't 100% say that women are never lying because of course they're not. Nothing is 100% ever. But just because you can't say that, because you can't say that absolutely zero cases are ever made up or lied about, that doesn't mean that you shouldn't put most of your trust in the women that are making the claims because they have no real reason to do it otherwise. And men are rapey assholes, so...
Right. And exactly. And we know that for a fact.
Yeah.
Like, that's demonstrable that we have that evidence that men behave this way commonly. You know, and I feel like that's a good amount of evidence. But at the same time, I do want to point out that sometimes, like, when we're dealing with, like, when we're talking about the existence of God, it's like a purely... it's a purely logical argument. There is no...
Yeah.
There's no, like, empathy or emotion involved.
There's no way to prove it or not prove it?
That too.
There's no human...
But there's no human aspect to it. It's purely logical arguments.
Right.
You know, about reality and things like that. You know what I mean? These, like, they would say to us, I'm sure it would be an appeal to emotion, which is why I kind of get pissed off that that's a fallacy to begin with. Because I'm like, dude, humans are fucking emotional. Like, we have emotions.
Yeah.
And we're talking about human behavior here. You know, so of course I'm going to appeal to emotion because that's what we're fucking talking about. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know.
Well, and it's not only human behavior, but it's, you know, it's human behavior that is judged to be wrong because it's harmful. I mean, human behavior can just be what it is. You can, you know, somebody doing a thing is a true thing. They're doing that thing. Whether or not that thing is good or not is subjective based on what our society thinks is harmful or not. Right. So yeah, you can't... Trying to apply scientific principles to it isn't really going to work, but I feel like so many atheists and skeptics want to have that hard and fast answer that no, there is a logical answer for everything, and this is the correct one in all of these cases. And
right, and they want to apply that same they want to apply that same logic that they do in their arguments of whether a God exists or not to things like this. Yeah, and I'm like, these are completely fucking different. So, I mean, we're not even in the same ballpark anymore. No. You know, we're talking about humans and human behavior, what we know about human behavior, and if this human did this thing to this other human, and how reasonable it is. Yeah. You know, and it's like we got to use the information that we have. Being a good skeptic is knowing how men typically behave as evidence for how this man has probably behaved towards this woman, you know? And women typically don't make stuff up because that makes their life harder so many times. If they were to just make this up, you know, can you imagine like how hard that would make your life just for no reason other than to just make something up?
Well, yeah. And I mean, there can be a motive, I suppose, at some point for some people. And it, you know, I suppose if you wanted to, especially if we're not talking about celebrities, if you wanted to make life hell for somebody that you know, and you are a totally unscrupulous person, and you have zero moral compass, then okay, I could see you making up something like that just to make their life hell.
Sure. Yeah, on your regular day-to-day basis, yeah.
Because you're a horrible human being. But that's, most women are not, you know, I'd rather go about my day and do the things I like to do and not be talking to police and giving statements and going to court. Like, why would you add that shit to your life if you don't have to? And I think part of the problem is that because women haven't reported it for so fucking long, because we haven't felt safe to report it, then all of a sudden you get all these men going, no, that can't be right. This cannot be. This many women doing this can't be right. No.
But that's the other piece of information we need to observe, like, it's because of this, you know what I mean? Because, like, we know, holy shit, this actually is something that goes on really, like, often. Yeah. And it wasn't reported before, you know, because they were in fear, you know, of their well-being, because if they came out and said this stuff, they could be completely crucified for it.
Well, not only that, but because we didn't, as a society, look at a lot of it as wrong. I mean, it used to be okay.
Nobody paid attention. Yeah,
no,
exactly.
Well, even if they did, it used to be totally okay to rape your wife because she was your wife. People didn't think it was wrong, so why would you report something that's okay? Because that's how society saw it, you know. And now we've started figuring out that shit that we used to think was okay is not fucking okay. And now we're dealing with the consequences of that, which is having to listen to all of these women say, here's this thing that happened to me and it was fucked up, and I want to prevent somebody else from having to go through that.
Right.
But I feel like if you've never been victimized like that, and if you don't, I guess as a woman, and I've talked about this before, but every female friend of mine that I know has been either assaulted or inappropriately touched or had something happen to her over the course of her life. And it was never shocking to me that that was the case. And I don't think it was shocking to them that it was the case. It's just something you kind of knew, like, oh, that's how men act. And here's the things they do. And so it becomes so commonplace that why would you go to the police? That makes no sense.
Yeah, it's like well, saying, of course he did that. Okay.
Yeah. Well, it's almost like telling somebody, oh, somebody stole your crayons, go to the police. It seemed that stupid to us just because it was something that was so fucking common,
Right.
If you've grown up,
like lowered the amount of
like if somebody if somebody grabs your ass at the bar, but that's happened to every single other one of your friends every single time they've gone to the bar, pretty soon you're like, I guess that's just what happens. That's just what men do. That's just part of life. You just got to put up with it. And I guess if you don't like it, don't go to the bar, right?
Fuck.
Yeah, you never. And men have spent a lot of time, I think, convincing women that they can't help it, that it's something they have to do, that it's part of their nature, that it's, it's not them being predatory. It's just they can't help it because boys will be boys. And we believe that for a long time.
And I swear it's almost been like a common thing because like growing up, like it's like I said, like I was so sheltered from the, because of the church and everything. And I was so told that sex and anything according to like in accordance with sex is horrible that I was always terrified of it. So I was always, once I left the church, I always thought my friends were crazy, because I was like, what are you doing, man? You can't do that. That's nuts. Don't do that. You're going to freak her out. Like whatever. And, but it was just normal for them. Yeah. You know what I mean? But for me, I was just freaked out by it, and it's like, I'm glad, honestly, that's one good thing I could say that I've gotten from religion is, I don't think that those things are okay because, I was terrified of anything like that,
Well, and I think that's why it's important for guys like you to talk about this sort of thing, because you've been with groups of other men where they have talked about this kind of thing. And like, I'm not privileged enough to get into a circle of friends who are all talking about very secretive things they've done in their life. I'm never going to know that. But I think a lot of guys know that their friends have done things and understand what that culture is like. And I think it's important for them to come out and say, yeah, this is the case. This is how people I know have behaved. And
right. And I actually wanted to bring this by you because I kind of wanted to get your opinion on it. Mm-hmm. It's very in step with what you're saying. It's like how with like black people and the oppression that they go through and stuff, and like what we were just talking about with the fact that we were 3 white people on an episode, or 5 white people talking. Yep. God damn, that makes it worse. But that we were talking about the N-word, and there was no black people there to like say, hey, there's like why, whatever. And part of me is like, we need to have a black person on there. We need to hoist them up. We need to lift up their voices so that they can tell us how they feel, and that's like our job. But at the same time, I'm also like, it's not their responsibility. It's not their responsibility to fight for their humanity. Same thing with trans women and men. Like, it's not their responsibility to constantly be fighting for their own humanity. It's up to us. It's up to us we caused this problem. Right. Since we caused it, we need to try to fix it, and it's...
I think it's good advice. And people have different points of view on how to do that. I mean, it's legitimate that you're not going to get the exact same answer from everybody in any kind of oppressed group. But I think the best way to approach it is to realize that you have some privilege that you can use, and how can you use that? The best way to use it is to talk to the people in your life that actually, excuse me, can't stop coughing, that actually know you and will talk to you and respect your opinion and push back on some of those things that they're saying. Like, it's the typical, when you go home for Thanksgiving, no, do talk politics. Do tell your fucking uncle that he's being racist, and do have these conversations, because that's the only way people change. People aren't going to, I think most guys aren't going to change because two ladies on a podcast are telling them they should stop doing something. But if their male friends who they have respect for start talking to them about these things, it doesn't necessarily change them overnight, but it gets them to think differently, I think, because they're hearing it. Yeah, it's
they
frustrating.
Don't have to be this way. Yeah, exactly.
It's frustrating because it's a typical, if a woman thinks of it, nobody talks about it. But then once it's a man's idea, then everybody jumps on board. And I get the frustration.
Yeah, that pisses me off too, because it's like, oh, nobody can be objective. Only white man, straight white men can be objective, and everybody else is just biased because they know that's not the case. Sorry.
It's I think the reason that white and straight cis white men especially feel like they can be unbiased is because they've never had to deal with any of this shit, because they haven't been discriminated against in the same ways that other people have.
But that's a crucial aspect. They're missing a crucial aspect of this other person's experience. And that's exactly why they can't talk about it with any type of intelligence, because they haven't experienced those experiences.
Yeah, I mean, my feeling, as I guess speaking on behalf of all women, as I like to do, I know a lot of women that would say that it's not appropriate ever for men to debate abortion. Ever. It's just not, just shut up. It's not your place. And I think there's some validity to that point, because if you're never going to be in the position where you're going to have to make that choice, if you're never ever going to be in a position where you're going to carry a pregnancy, then you fundamentally just cannot understand how important it is. And it's not because you're a bad person or because you lack understanding. It's just that unless you're somebody who has to live with that, you can't possibly know. I'm never, ever going to know what it's like to live as a black woman in America. I'm just not. And so there's things that come along with that I can't pretend to know about, because I never will. But at the same time, I think that the more people arguing on the right side, the better, from my point of view. I'm totally cool with men that are trying to further the cause of feminism. I'm cool with that. As long as they're not, I think where people get upset is when they come in and start telling you things, that you already know, which is called mansplaining, or assuming that they know more than you about the topic, when they just don't.
Yeah, that's offensive.
Or the frustrating.
Look, lady, you don't know what it's like to get an abortion. I do.
Exactly.
Okay?
And treating it like it's just a logical debate to have, because what else would it be, right? It's just this fun, logical, philosophical discussion we can have. And if we just get from point A to point B, no, that's not how life works.
Doesn't work that way.
No, but it's you're lucky if you can sit back and have that philosophical argument, because it's never actually going to affect you.
Right.
But I think there are plenty of, I guess I would say, allies. I know there's a lot of baggage around that word too.
Advocate would be another
advocate.
Word.
There's a good one.
That's what I always say we are.
Yes,
because
there you
ally,
go. So
you kind of got to be told that you're an ally. You can't.
Exactly.
It's like being cool. You can't just tell everybody you're cool. Nobody's going to believe you.
Unless you're me. I gotta do it all the time. Okay. Yeah, that's the whole shtick of our show.
Well, you're an exception.
So it's okay. Amy and I do it all the time. I think you're totally right, and I think that. I guess we all have different skills and things that we bring to the table. And I feel like you and I are both the type of people who are very extroverted and talkative and kind of putting ideas out there. And that's a strength. And so I think both of us have the ability to go out and talk to people about things that maybe they need to start thinking differently about, or, we're able to go out and advocate for people who don't have the energy to do it themselves.
Right.
If somebody's making a shitty post on Facebook and it's the 100th time that day that I've seen some shitty thing about trans people, I'll jump in and try to, say something, just because I know that my trans friends have also had to read that thing 100 times and try to answer the 100th shitty thing people have said about.
Right.
Like, I feel like it's taking some of the stress off of them if I can do that.
It's not they shouldn't have that responsibility to always advocate for their humanity. That's insane.
Yeah. And it's not my place. It's not my place to go and say, here's what it's like for trans people, because I don't know. I never will. But I can at least stand up and say, it's not okay to argue somebody's humanity. That's what you're doing is not okay. And
have you ever thought of this? Have you ever thought of this situation? Have you ever thought of like you being the trans person and going, that's what I try to do is just try to get
doing what you
them,
can to change minds,
right? Just
where you can
get them to think from somebody else's pair of shoes, and it's like that's one thing that I had never done until I became an atheist, and and I think that's one reason why, and I'm sure it's not for everybody, but that's just the way it was for me. Was I listened once I became an atheist. I started to listen to people and be like, hold on, let me analyze this data, and try to think about things from their shoes and try to understand how they are. I can't do it, of course. I can't completely understand, but I can try, and try
you have
to
basic human empathy, and you can use that.
Right, and that's important. And I feel like that's what we're lacking so much, because before, when I was a Christian and a conspiracy theorist and a right-wing nut, I would have just been like, no, I could be like that, and I wouldn't do it, and it's not, and so that means they shouldn't do it, what I mean? And it's like, but you're not everybody, man.
Well, and not only that, but eventually you changed. Your ideas changed. It was you were capable of changing, and I think other people are capable of changing.
I think so too.
If we're willing to put in the time to do that. We're obviously not going to change everybody's mind, and we're certainly not going to do it because of one Facebook conversation. Sure. But I think the more you can do that, and the more other people can watch as you're doing that, I mean, I think it does. There are some people who will think, oh, I haven't thought about it that way before, and that'll kind of plant that seed. And yeah, I don't think the oppressed group should have to be the ones going around doing that, they shouldn't have to convince anybody. No. And it's shitty that we live in a world where people need to be convinced in the first place.
Right.
But yeah, I think if that's one of your skills, then I don't think there's anything wrong in using that, as long as you are communicating effectively, and not everybody can do it.
Right. And just to be clear, I'm not saying that if there's trans folks out there that actually like going into those comment threads and doing that stuff. I'm not saying that they shouldn't do that.
No.
I'm just saying they shouldn't have to do
exactly.
that. That's all I'm saying. Okay.
Yeah. And again, because there's people who are more than willing to go in and fight the good fight and do that, and there's some people who are just exhausted, and there's some people who just don't have the kind of personality where they want to do that, and it could be a million different reasons. And if there is a trans person there arguing for themselves, I feel like my place is to back them up where I can, in as respectful a way as I can, and not walk all over their ideas and their points.
Right.
But if there's a way to, I guess, have their back and just kind of agree with what, you have to read the room sometimes, but
you just got to basically listen. You listen to the folks that are close to you, and you try and do your best. Honestly, everybody, if you don't, get to know some people, there's plenty of shows with like trans folks that are the hosts and stuff that would be glad to talk to you and hang out or whatever. Get to know them. Listen to their shows. You get to know people really well by listening to their podcast, honestly.
Yeah. I think that's one really valuable thing about podcasts, honestly, is that, especially someone like me who lives in this tiny little rural town that's just completely homogenous. I can listen to these shows and feel like I know these people who are talking, and it gives you so much empathy for them, and you start to understand what it is they're telling you, and you start to feel like, oh, they're not different than me. We think the same way, or
Exactly.
I think it's that I like to seek out shows that are hosted by people different from me, because that's a good way to learn about people.
Right, and it's always so entertaining, honestly. I mean, that's not weird. Like, that's not the reason you should do it. You should do it because you want to know who they are. But it is honestly entertaining because these folks are awesome. And if they're podcasters, they're probably fun fucking people.
Yeah, usually.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
And there's so many good ones. I mean, if you listen to Queer Splaining, Sarah Talk, the Ginger Snaps, Odd Atheist Friends, like there's so many good shows out there to lift these people up, and to listen to them and to really understand where they're coming from.
Yeah, honestly, I wish we had more atheist shows hosted by people of color. That's something I think is really missing in our community. There are some, and obviously your show is one of them.
Yeah, we are.
But we need more. Like, we need so many more of those, because that's a viewpoint that we don't hear from enough, and it's a problem in the atheist community. There's a lot of racism in the atheist community. And
a lot of the other communities have gotten so much strength and power from their religious communities that they were in, that I understand why it's difficult for people of color to go,
sure,
I'm not religious at all, like because it has done so much for them in a real way, not in a way that like white evangelical and shit has done for anybody. You know what I mean? Like, it's totally different for a person of color, especially a black person of color, to say, talking about their religious experience.
It's their supportive community, I would imagine. It's
exactly.
Yeah,
it's a community, and it brought them together, and it gave them power. It was the whole thing of the 60s was Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Like, that's how they got their power at that time, was by community building within the church. So I don't blast them too hard, I would always say, when it comes to religion, because it's different for them. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like us.
I'm not saying I wish that more people of color would just turn into atheists. I guess what I wish is that we just had more podcasts in general from everybody of different points of view, because I feel like we do have, there's always not enough of everything, but we do have, several shows with trans hosts, and we have several shows with female hosts, and that, we're doing better with that. We're having more diversity, but I feel like we miss out so much when we don't listen to people of color and what their experience is like, especially when they leave the church, and how different that is for them than it is for white evangelicals.
Right.
It's just another way to, I guess, realize that your life isn't exactly like other people's, and that's why you may not see things exactly the same way as they do.
Right.
So it's basically, we just need to, I think more of the people in Black Non-Believers need to get podcasts. That's what I'm saying.
Right, yes.
We need a really good Black Non-Believers podcast. I would love to listen to that.
Does Mandisa have a podcast?
No, I take that back. I know she's been on Godless Bitches a few times. I know she guests on podcasts. She gets interviewed a lot. Yeah. And I want to say she did at some point talk about being on a show that focused on, I think, atheist parenting, but I think it was a radio show. Maybe. Oh, God. I don't pay good enough attention. It's not like her show that she hosts. I think she was part of it, but man, if there was a Mandisa Thomas podcast, I would listen to the shit out of that. Yeah.
Oh man, yeah, because she is so fun to listen to. Honestly.
Yeah. I would that's something. Yeah, I think that's for all the shit people who podcast get. I think that's something good that we do. Honestly, is just exposing people to more stuff than they would otherwise.
Hell yeah. That's the whole point, is to understand, do your best to actually understand everybody's experience and not act like you know everybody's experience before you know it.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Unless you actually do know everybody's experience, like me, because I'm omnipotent. So, yeah, no.
Well, you got to have that empathetic view if you do. So, that's why I would say, like, guys can have conversations about abortion as long as they're fighting for the women.
Yeah.
If not, then shut the fuck up and get the fuck out of that conversation because you don't know what you're talking about.
Right, and don't tell the woman that her point of view is wrong because she's not a real feminist. Oh my God, that drives me crazy. But the real feminists believe that men and women are equal inherently, but then by focusing on the differences, that means that you're not really fighting for equality and just all this semantic bullshit. That Is
it TERFs? Are TERFs the real feminists? Like, is that what that is?
I don't know. What I found is that the real feminists are white male atheists who think they understand everything about equality. That's what I have found. Those are the real feminists working in the trenches.
That's the one thing you have to recognize if you are going to claim feminism or anything like that. You have to always recognize that you don't know everything, and you always are learning.
And you know what? Feminists are going to disagree with each other. And atheists are going to disagree with each other. And activists of any kind are going to disagree with each other at times on issues. Yeah. And that's just part of life. It's messy and you hash it out and you talk about it. And
that's the way it goes.
That's why podcasts are good. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
We should probably wrap this up because it's been like a solid 2 hours and my kids probably think I died of coronavirus by now. Or from eating too many Peeps because...
The Peeps will do it.
They really will. They expand in your intestines and then you just explode because...
They're like a tampon in your throat.
Yeah, it's really bad for your intestines. Yeah. Peeps. Anyway. So do you have any like final thoughts you need to get off your chest to tell the world about this subject, or I don't know?
Real quick, I do want to point out that Bill Maher said the N-word on his show and was fine. But other than that...
Wait, he didn't get canceled?
No, he did not. I know, right?
I thought his show got taken off the air. Man.
No.
I am so wrong about that.
Yeah, he's still going strong on HBO.
Weird.
Perfectly
so weird.
fine.
It's almost as if the people most afraid of being canceled are never actually canceled.
I know. Weird.
And it's kind of a figment of their imagination.
It's pretend.
No,
it's not. But...
I mean, nothing's perfect. People are always going to get hurt that shouldn't be hurt. I get it. You know who else gets hurt that shouldn't be hurt? Victims of actual sexual assault and actual racist acts. And let's try to be equally concerned about those people as we are about, God forbid, the white men getting told that they did something that they didn't. Like, how many black men are sitting in prison for shit they didn't do?
Right.
Where's all of our outrage for them? Let's worry about them more, you know?
Right. For resisting arrest and nothing else.
Yeah. Spend your time advocating for those dudes.
Look that up. Look up
and
those
not
statistics.
as much time advocating for David Silverman because he doesn't need it.
He's not worth it. It's not worth it.
All right. Well, this was a fun conversation, and I think we've said everything there is to say on the topic of cancel culture.
It's got to be.
Ever. So nobody ever needs to talk about it again. That's what I know. So, yeah, if you're listening to this, then you already know where to listen to us. But for me, it would be Secular Soup, and for Brent, it would be Unapologetix. And
that's right.
If you're smart enough to figure out how to listen to a podcast, I feel like you can figure out how to leave reviews and follow and all that good shit. So
it's not difficult.
Should we do your show outro that I never get right? We can do that.
Yeah, you want to do that?
I'll give it a fourth try and see if I can get it right.
You just say it.
I'm going to fuck it up again.
You don't have to drag it out.
See, I don't understand if it's supposed to be drawn out or if it's supposed to be loud or if the emphasis is supposed to be on the fuck or the off. Like, I don't. It's so confusing. But I'll give it a try.
Off, the music's going to bump in and be like,
okay. Perfect.
So you go like, fuck off, and boom, then the music comes in. It's cool.
Good. Note that, Rich, when you're editing my show, that...
I'll put the note in there so you know.
Okay. Perfect. Perfect. All right. Thank you all so much for being here. Thank you, Brent, for having this conversation. And you do your outro.
You ready? All right.
Yep.
So what do we say to the haters, discriminators, and masturbator shamers? Fuck off.